I don't like the term, particularly in sports. I'm not even sure I like it used in business. I think the term culture is thrown around far too often. I think it's too easy. I think it's become sort of blanket. I don't like the term. Certainly in a reference of sports. And it's not used and abused as much as the word adversity, which is officially the thing that makes my head explode when somebody says they faced adversity today. No, you fumbled the ball 3 times, jackass. You didn't have adversity. But culture is quickly moving up that chart of being overused. I don't think that it has, that I can tell now, has real meaning. I don't think when you hear it or say it yourself, I don't think you put any context to it. So I don't like it. I don't like the term. I think it's used too often. I now think, because it's being used and applied to your Dallas Cowboys. Here we are almost to March, and the Dallas Cowboys find their way, as usual, into drama. It's an interesting story that just came out. He may have been just joking around, but I think there's a lot to it. And I do think it pulls the curtain back on a lot of the problems the Dallas Cowboys have had. I think I can make some sense of it. I think I can do a better job. I'm going to try. I may nerd out. I might even make reference to one of my favorite books, The Inner Game of Tennis. So it'll really get nerdy. But the Cowboys have found their way into drama. They are always good talk show material. They are always going to be dramatic. But I don't know the term culture is being applied to the Cowboys in the right way. The Cowboys are a ridiculously underachieving organization. Now, you want to say that's culture? I guess go ahead. I'm going to argue that. But they are ridiculously underachieving. I think blaming everything on all their underachieving, we're talking about almost 30 years of underachieving. I think blaming everything on culture is too easy and it's too broad. The Cowboys have found their way, though, into drama. And somehow, all these years later, it involves Jimmy Johnson all over again, and people are going to be giddy about this. People are going to think this is great, Jeff. He's Jimmy Johnson. They're talking again, man. He's going to fix them. Oh no. This was before it came out midday today, maybe a little later than that. The Jimmy Johnson doing an interview. Who I know, Jimmy Johnson, known him quite some time, incredibly successful Hall of Fame coach. We all know that stuff by now. He's an older guy, though. He came out and said he and Jerry are talking. He and Jerry Jones were talking an hour after the Packers destroyed the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas to continue the unbelievable stretch of underachieving. And so it was like somebody threw a stick of dynamite out there. I could see Cowboys fans and face painters saying, okay, that's it. Jimmy's going to fix us. No, he's not. He's not. And it's not a culture problem. It's sort of a culture problem, but no one's fixing you. No one is fixing you. Okay? So the day starts. I'm thinking, do the Cowboys have a culture problem? Let's put our arms around, do they have a culture problem? If so, who did that and why? And it's not a bad debate. I just don't think it's right. Here goes ESPN and Stephen A. Smith and the others this morning blaming everything on Jerry Jones, which is fine, and culture.
Jerry is the coach. He's the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, the position coach, because this is what he's allowed to happen. When Jimmy was there, you actually think somebody would have ever uttered, I'm tired. Absolutely not. The problem is that Jerry has allowed this to happen, go on for far too long. I'm not excusing the players, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for what happens on that field. But Jerry has allowed this. He doesn't put a coach in place. He doesn't put people in place that can hold the players accountable. And what I've known is players, if you don't hold them accountable, more times than not, they're going to do what the Cowboys have been doing over the last 25 plus years.
My answer to this question, Shannon, is they should have hired Bill Belichick. This is exactly what I was talking about. It's not just that he's a 6-time champion as a head coach, a 2-time champion as a coordinator, a person that as a head coach went to 9 Super Bowls. It's the Patriot mystique during all of those years of success. Whether they were winning the Super Bowl, whether they went to 10 seasons without winning the Super Bowl or whatever, you heard about the Patriot way. And we knew what that meant, the Belichick way. Because even though he had a superstar who would ultimately be known as the greatest of all time in Tom Brady, it was clear who was running football operations. It was clear that if you did anything inside that locker room that was not liked or was frowned upon by Bill Belichick, something's going to happen to you. Everybody understood it. You knew Robert Kraft was the owner. You knew that the buck stopped with him, but you also knew that when it came to inside that locker room, there was one voice. See, Robert Kraft might have something to say when it comes to finances, when it comes to contractual negotiations, etc. But the football portion of it, inside that locker room, how you walked, how you talked, how you act, how you chirped, what you said to the media, what you didn't say to the media, how you conducted yourself. Oh, no, that was one voice right there. That was one. Yeah, and that person was Bill Belichick.
No, actually. No. The Patriot way was Tom Brady. He was. Okay, so all that we all have heard that a million times. You can think that. I'm not going to completely disagree, but I think there's a variation of this that people are now missing. Everyone acts as if Jerry Jones, just started as the owner in the last 20 years of the Dallas Cowboys. He was the same guy operating the same way. He bought the team, $182 million, believe it or not, worth $10 billion now. But he bought the team and made the famous comment, like a goofball that he is, I'm into socks and jocks. He was hanging around then. He's not any different now. I mean, he's old and his face is more plastic, but he's not any different now as an owner than he was when they won multiple championships. Remember, they won a championship with Barry Switzer. That's not exactly some tyrant out there. He's not exactly Vince Lombardi or Bill Belichick, and they still won a championship. I think people are overanalyzing this. Tom Brady won those championships. And that, I think, is where I can explain the differences here, the culture part of this, which I don't think is culture at all. But, I mean, is Jerry Jones to blame for for underachieving? Exactly what happened against the Green Bay Packers is a microcosm of the last 29 years. You underachieve. You've got talent. Dallas has not had this kind of talent for a long time. They had talent, and they're tight. It's a tight team. They play tight, and I'm going to explain the differences here. I mean, Jerry Jones, the culture of Jerry Jones, to be honest, is no different today. Is the media whore that he is. I mean, he's not any different. He's not. What they have and their direction is different, but no. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't think Belichick was any different. When he got Tom Brady, things became different. So, is Jones to blame? Yes and no. Can it be fixed? Probably not anymore. At some point, yes. But Dallas plays the game, they're tight. They're tight. They reminds me of Dallas in a lot of ways. The Buffalo Bills. Stuff just doesn't work. You know the difference between a Brady and everyone else? The difference between how the Cowboys play and other teams? The term you're looking for when you say culture, when you want to analyze the psychology of football teams or any sports teams, the difference is it's just closing. It's just closing. Some people close you out. Brady will close you out. Jordan would close you out. Mahomes will close you out. It's not about the culture. Those are players who finish it off. Or a coach who finishes it off. That's not about the culture. Dallas plays tight. Buffalo plays tight. There are plenty of teams that play tight. So now all of a sudden, and I know the reaction, I think he had to know the reaction. And I think he probably was joking to a degree. This is not what Dallas needed publicly. Dallas did not need this publicly. Having Jimmy Johnson back in some weird capacity, having Jimmy Johnson, who's an older guy now, got to be late 70s at least himself, has not been on a sideline in a long, long time. Having Jimmy Johnson back in some capacity, it's not going to change anything. It's not, okay? It's just going to further neuter Mike McCarthy. It's going to neuter, again, the Cowboys organization. They're neutered by drama, if you want to find an issue here. And that may be part of the reason why they play so tight. So what happened now? I'm watching this scroll across the screen, okay? And I'm starting to laugh. I'm thinking, I know this is going to be a big deal. It's going to be a huge deal in the state of Texas, and I don't know what people think they're really getting. But I guess you're hanging on to something, so you'll be happy about this. Jimmy Johnson is doing an interview. He doesn't do many. I've reached out to him several times. I've known him for a long time. His son and I played in college together. Since the Ring of Honor, this is Jimmy Johnson now. Since the Ring of Honor, which was a whole dramatic debate, too, which was stupid. I'm on Jerry Jones's advisory board now. Now, this is reported by SI.com. Was he being sarcastic? I mean, yes and no, except here's what the hand grenade was. We were talking on the phone about an hour after his Green Bay loss. I like how Jimmy Johnson phrases that. And he was talking about what all he needed to do because he had big decisions on Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn and Dak Prescott. Everything is hunky-dory now. I'm back in the fold with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know why he felt the need to say that. He could have joked and said, I'm back in the fold. But where it's not so funny is... And I can't believe that Jerry Jones would be happy about this, saying that an hour after the game, after the most impactful loss of the past 20 years for the Dallas Cowboys at home, to now have you outed as being on the phone with Jimmy Johnson an hour after that game and having Jimmy Johnson say publicly, we were talking about the important stuff, really is neutering everybody in that organization. It is, to a degree, neutering Jerry Jones as well. It's the very reason, in a comical way, he ran Jimmy Johnson off when he did. He did not want it to look like that's the guy making this stuff happen. And now here he is doing it all over again. They're having the exact same public, silly, dramatic issue 30 years later. Well, he's leaning on me. He's even calling me an hour after the game. Guess who he picks up the phone to talk about the important stuff? His coach and his quarterback. Guess who? Me. And that is, I don't know how Jerry Jones is going to handle that. I think it's a really bad look for the Cowboys. It's a horrible look for Mike McCarthy. He's completely neutered. It's just, you could just somewhere, he may be in Cabo for all I know. Dak Prescott is rolling his eyes. So it's going to start a fight. It's going to start a dramatic old man fight, and it's going to be silly. It's not the reason why Dallas underachieves. It's really not the reason why any team underachieves. And while some of them can just close out games, they just close. Remember that. They finish the game off. They will finish the opponent off. That's not this drama. Even though everyone's going to go crazy, everyone's going to focus on this. Everyone's now going to say, see, the culture of Jimmy Johnson is going to come back now. He's 80, and he's going to come back to the Cowboys, and he's going to fix it all. And now Jerry Jones is going to get pissed about that and say, no, I'm fixing it. So it's going to be silly. It's not their problem. Jimmy Johnson cannot fix them. He can't. He cannot fix them. He was the reason, one of the biggest reasons in terms of being a closer why they were winning the way they were at the time. But Jerry Jones wasn't operating any less. Jerry Jones, the general manager, along with his son, have given the Cowboys roster all that it needed. There were good players all over the place. There are Pro Bowl players all over the place. They're just tight. They play tight. They don't close. They don't close. The Bills don't close. And it's not just a Dallas problem, but this is increasingly highlighted as a giant Dallas problem. So, well, Jeff, can't we blame it on somebody? Yeah, you can. I mean, Jones deserves the blame, but Jones, the general manager, gave that. They've got players. See, the difference is, let me point it out this way. The Inner Game of Tennis is this incredible book written a long, long time ago by a Harvard-trained psychiatrist who happened to be a tennis player. And this is the classic example of tackling overthinking things. This is what makes people tight. This is what makes them not fearless. And so The Inner Game of Tennis is a book, and the psychiatrist wrote it from the perspective of learning concentration techniques. Now, you're not learning concentration techniques because, everyone has experience with this. You're not learning concentration techniques because you are going to think, if I do that, I execute that. No. The concentration techniques are to take you out of focusing on the result and just playing, getting lost in the game. The concentration techniques are to get you away from worrying about the score and just playing, just letting it go. People read the book and they still come up with the wrong thing. It even talks about the sound of the ball. It does all these little things you're supposed to do to train yourself to do so you get lost in the moment. You're not thinking about the score. You're thinking about the sound. You're thinking about a seam on the tennis ball. You're only lost in the game itself. You're fearless because you're just lost in the game. That's how Patrick Mahomes plays. He's just fearless. It's not the scoreboard. It's nothing else except I'm in the game. I'm in the game. I'm lost in the game. That's the difference between tight players, tight teams, and those that close out. They're overthinking the scoreboard. They're overthinking the execution and not lost in the moment. I know that sounds sort of like psychobabble, but it's not at all. And, using Belichick as the example, that's why the Patriots won. See, that's what Dallas doesn't have. I don't think is entirely true. Dallas won. There are two types of superstar closers. Okay, coach and player. And I know, people then would say, was Dak Prescott this guy? No, he's tight. He is. He's far from Mahomes. But I'll give you what I think is the example of the different types of coaches and players. And I don't think this is because Jerry Jones, the hands-on guy, set this culture. Jerry Jones's mistake has been not finding that guy, that quarterback, that coach, that guy. It's not that Jerry Jones talks too much or he runs around and does all these things. It's what's on the field. It's just what's on the field. Who can close? Who can play the right way? So, example, Belichick didn't create that culture. Brady did. And Brady didn't start by, some masterful mission statement like all goofy companies have written on some plaque somewhere. It's the execution, just showing up and doing it, man. Brady, these two types of players that get lost in the moment. This is what Dr. Galloway talked about, is they get angry, they play angry, and those that play incredibly loose. But both of them are lost in everything but the scoreboard. Brady is like Michael Jordan, like Jimmy Johnson. They look for a fight to get lost in. The genius, the great closing ability of Jimmy Johnson, the coach, Tom Brady, the player, Michael Jordan, the player, was they would find a fight. I'll cut your heart out, man. I just want to beat you. They'll look for anybody to beat. They're not playing the scoreboard. They're looking for anybody to beat. Any fight, any way, and they get lost in that. They're angry. And that anger, as Galloway wrote, in terms of focus, that anger is perfectly fine. I mean, as long as you're not, committing penalties and stuff like that, and you lose your head. No, you're lost in the moment. They're lost in the moment. Jordan would get lost in the moment of just beating you off the dribble. You want to take me on? I'll crush you. Jimmy Johnson coached that way. They were angry. He coached in an angry way. They got lost in the game in this competitive way. Flip side of all that is the complete opposite, but it's the same result, the same fearless way of going about things. Is completely opposite is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Those guys get lost in the game and love it. I played with one of the best players I ever played with, a guy named Jerry Gray, who was an All-American football player at Texas. Jerry used to laugh when he played. I've never been around anyone who loved playing. The guy would go play in a 6-on-6 game if you set it up somewhere and love every single second of it. So would Patrick Mahomes. Those guys love being on a field and playing that game. They're lost in it. They're fearless because they just enjoy the game. It's like sandlot football for them. They don't care about all the other stuff. They don't care about the scoreboard even. They just get out there and start playing. They're fearless. Brady is fearless because he wants to cut your heart out. Mahomes is fearless because he's happy to be playing and goofing around. Andy Reid is fearless and coaches a game fearlessly because it's a lot of fun tinkering. That guy would have almost as much fun probably coaching some flag game, designing stuff. Jordan was fearless because he wanted to just beat you wherever you are in that moment. They're not tight. They're fearless. And there's different ways of people executing and being fearless. Dallas is always tight. Buffalo looks to be tight to me. Stuff just doesn't work in the end. They just don't close. Mahomes doesn't get lost in anything except the game. It's just, that guy, you probably could talk him into go playing a pickup game somewhere and he would have a blast. He would have a great time. It's just fun for him. Brady had to look for a reason to cut your heart out just to beat you. Okay. But they weren't tight. So that Jones's mistake, the genius of Jimmy Johnson was that was an organization, that was a way they played. They were Brady-like and how they were angry. But Jones didn't ruin that. He just hasn't had anybody since. He hasn't had a player like, I know it's easy to say now, but he's had players that have been tight. He's had coaches that are tight. They're scoreboard watchers. That's not coming from how Jones runs, the fact that Jones is doing interviews, the fact that Jones gave him good players. He put good players out there. They're just missing that thing where they don't close. They're just tight. The way they play. And now that to circle it back to Jimmy Johnson coming out and saying today, because everybody would say, Jimmy can fix this. He can't anymore. He's not on that field. He's not. This is why I think younger coaches work. I think they're not as caught up in other stuff. They get lost in the game a lot more. Andy Reid gets lost in the game a lot more. Jimmy Johnson in his prime would get lost in the game a lot more. Aikman was an angry player. They didn't think about all the other stuff. They thought about just cutting your heart out. It's too late now. You can't call Jimmy Johnson up and say, how would you fix us now? He's going to say, well, you got good players here. You got good players there. Quarterback is good. That guy's good. You got a defensive end that's really good. You guys are just tight. That's it. They play that way. That's what underachieving teams do. That's what underachievers do. Paralysis by analysis. That doesn't come from Jerry Jones, the owner. That comes from the people that Jones has hired. He probably does. Belichick was an interesting idea. The more I think about it now, Belichick could get him in the right direction. Belichick could sort of make some rules that sound cool and old school. Belichick could probably point the finger the right way. Belichick could cut you. But I'm not sure that even works. Andy Reid doesn't do that stuff. Andy Reid had a player knock him over, and he didn't even get upset because he just enjoys it. He just lost in the game, man. So this is going to now start all sorts of issues, and what an embarrassing day because Jimmy Johnson's throwaway comment, yeah, he called me after the game, yeah, we talked about McCarthy, yeah, we talked about this, and it's probably true. It's not the worst thing that he's gone public with this, but it's going to start this debate. It's going to start it on ESPN already. See what the problem is. So Jimmy is going to fix him again. I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's possible now. And it's just going to end up now. You can set your clock to it. Jerry Jones is going to be furious because the perception now is 30 years later, I had to lean on Jimmy Johnson to fix us and take care of things all over again.